Assassin's Creed Valhalla talks a big game, but the question is, will it deliver? The cross-platform launch of Assassin's Creed Valhalla has garnered a lot of positive publicity. The recent premiere trailer promises an exciting world for both long-term fans and casuals alike. The prospect of playing as a Viking raider during the midst of the invasion of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms is universally quite appealing, and the re-emphasis on weighty combat, a defined playable character, and the return of social stealth almost seems like the developers are trying their utmost to distance themselves from the most recent game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they would be absolutely right to do so. I will preface this discussion by acknowledging that I am very much a long-term fan of the series. The modern day stealth mechanics and historical accuracy is what drew me to the franchise. Now, I also recognise that the series has gone through significant changes that Valhalla won't suddenly reverse. The state of play is that in 2020, the Assassin's Creed series is an open-world RPG above all else. Debatable as it is, this is the path Ubisoft is firmly sticking to. Now, in the context of the previous games, and with the upcoming release of Valhalla, it is important to assess what has gone right thus far in this endeavour, and of course, what they need to very quickly learn. On the surface, Assassin's Creed Valhalla sounds like an Odin-casted gust of fresh air. The compromise between the previous titles, of having both a male and female option, as well as a character with an already defined personality, is very encouraging. Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins is, in my opinion, one of, if not the best playable character we've experienced in the series. I know, sacrilege not to say Ezio, but that is just my opinion. Whereas Alexios and Cassandra are blank slates, who are too malleable. Eivor, who can be played as male or female in Valhalla, is canon either way, which will apparently be explained within the game, and the developers have stated that Eivor is going to have a coherent personality, specifically stating, "We want our character, Eivor, to exist in a coherent space and have a coherent personality." This was said by narrative director Darby McDevitt in a recent Q&A with fans. He went on to say, "So that by the time you get to the end of our game, no matter what little path you took throughout, you always feel like Eivor was Eivor." This declaration is significant, as one of the most divisive aspects of Odyssey was how malleable the main character's personality felt. One moment, you could be a sensible, philosophical soul who practices reason and level-headedness. The next, a callous killer who levels heads clean off with all the delicacy and finesse of me consuming my Friday night kebab. In a game that takes you back in time to relive past memories, such freedom of choice is hard to justify in what should be a preordained story. Hopefully, having the same development team as Origins will yield a character at least half as developed as Bayek, which in an RPG-style game would be a success, in my opinion. The bullet-spongy combat from Odyssey, and to a lesser extent Origins, was one of my biggest gripes with the new direction towards RPG-style games. In Odyssey, the combat is a complete slog, and suspends all forms of realism. Now, the description given for Valhalla's combat is that combat is visceral, brutal. We made sure that every swing of an axe, every defense with a shield feels good, as they aim to create the ultimate Viking experience. The phrasing here is important. The ultimate Viking experience, for me, is an indication that realism and authenticity are taking priority over the spongy fantasism. I'll be honest, I couldn't think of a better adjective there. Power simulation we've experienced in the previous two games, again, mainly applicable to Odyssey. This is a good thing. Fortunately, there are some positives pertaining to the combat from the recent titles that Valhalla also looks to build upon. It has been stated that there will be a great deal of enemy and weapon variety, with a new take on the progression and gear system. This mechanical evolution, as opposed to revolution, is I believe the correct course. For all of Odyssey's missteps, one area in which I feel showed a lot of progression from previous titles was in the weapon customization. Not so much the over-the-top fantasy FX, but rather in all the customizable pieces of gear, and the ability to change the look so you haven't got to wear ugly gear just for the stat buffs. I think that quality over quantity is an important consideration for the developers. Doubling down on upgrading your weapon by allowing trinkets, engravings, visually this time rather than just stat buffs, and perhaps attaching quests to some weapon unlocks would all be good steps to improve upon the gameplay loop, add a better sense of progression and reward for the player's time. Speaking of the player's time, the world of Assassin's Creed has grown exponentially since 2007. in terms of lore, ambition, and map size. Origins and Odyssey are mammoth titles, electing for scale, in Odyssey's case foregoing diversity and variety in world design and gameplay for a world which constantly makes you question if you're going through some sort of ancient Greek Groundhog Day fever dream. One of the biggest proclamations made so far by the development team is that Valhalla's world is one worth exploring, a world that can be truly shaped by the decisions you make. Now, information is relatively limited on this front. However, the settlement building system gives us an insight into how the world would differentiate from previous titles. It is stated that the settlement is really your home in the world. You grow this place in terms of both buildings and people. The idea is that it's really at the heart of the journey. This is the place you come back to customise your character and do a lot of things for Eivor. The settlement is unlike anything we've done in the past. It's quite key to the motivation of the journey and to the world itself. Big claims indeed. I really do hope that Darby is not just waxing poetic here. The idea that the settlement is where all your quests, key relationships and character development occurs is certainly ambitious, but its success is heavily contingent on its implementation. It is important that the rest of the world works in conjunction with this settlement. Essentially, the way they are presenting this system makes it seem like the settlement is the springboard for the gameplay loop. Visiting other areas in the world is further incentivised by the effects it will have upon this central hub area. On the surface, this would circumvent some of the issues found in Odyssey. One problem I had with the world of Odyssey is how disconnected it felt. In some ways, this was a good thing. Some of the islands having their own side quest arcs was quite cool, actually. But there was no true central hub that connected the islands to each other from a narrative standpoint. Essentially, your ship was the closest thing to this, and so the people you met, the stories told, never really came full circle. Valhalla seems to be trying to rectify this issue. Of course, this concept becomes obsolete if the world beyond the settlement is repetitive, bland, filled with archaic activities. Quality over quantity should be the focus of the developers here, and diversifying the world in terms of locale, activities and quests is one of the most important parts of achieving this. Now, for a long time, the series has been plagued with Ubisoft-style open-world activities. Capturing collectibles with a mind of their own, syncing the map and taking down settlements are all staples of the series. Are these activities by nature terrible? No, not necessarily. But as the size of the game has developed, so has the frequency of these activities. A game that I believe recently did a good job of implementing these open-world style activities whilst also keeping them from getting stale was Spider-Man PS4. You see, in Spider-Man, the volume of these activities was moderate and there was always a purpose attached to them that incentivised you to keep playing. The forts, or in Spider-Man's case for gang strongholds, were important to take out from a narrative point of view. Chasing the pigeons helped hone your web slinging and was tied to a side mission, and the research stations helped develop the future major character's relationship with Peter. Alone, these activities are all essentially busy work, but they all held a purpose that enhanced the game world beyond just a superficial level. Valhalla's settlement system seems to suggest the team is aware of this, and so it looks like a lot of the busy work in the gameplay loop could tie into the settlement system. One of the most gratifying parts of the reveal trailer for Valhalla was the emphasis on the Hidden Blade. If the trailer is anything to go by, the Hidden Blade definitely seems to once again be an important part of the combat. Now of course, the omission of the Hidden Blade in Odyssey was also reflective of the fact that the assassins themselves were not a major factor in the game. We've been told that in Valhalla, at a certain point Eivor's motivations will align with some assassin characters that we meet, so there will be some alignment there, and they will work together in a certain fashion. Crucially here, they are not outright stating Eivor is an assassin, and considering this is the same development team from Black Flag, I wouldn't be surprised if Eivor has a relationship similar to that of Edward Kenway's. Essentially pirate, or in this case Viking first, assassin second. Whether Eivor becomes an assassin is a different matter entirely, but certainly it is a relief to be going back to the assassins' conflict with the Templars, and I don't think this dynamic is an issue. Not every game has to follow a devotee assassin. Remember Erudito, anyone? The presentation of Eivor as a lone wolf type already hints at their involvement in the conflict may likely stem from a common interest, the conquest of England perhaps. Regardless, it is important that the Hidden Blade feels powerful once again. Considering that they are aiming to provide the ultimate Viking experience, I also hope that this commitment to authenticity translates to the Hidden Blade and overall stealth mechanics. The return of social stealth elements is a promising start, and they do mention that there are ways to make the Hidden Blade a one-hit kill, as early in the experience Eivor will learn a technique that, with the right timing, can one-shot virtually anybody. The fact is, a clean stab in the neck, unfortunately in real life, will mess someone up, and will near enough be fatal provided you were trained as an assassin with centuries of historical practice and perfection. As such, the Hidden Blade needs to be lethal. Of course, there can be certain modifiers such as heavily armoured guards and the need to target weak points, so as to not trivialise the experience. Nevertheless, I think the gameplay should, in the case of doing assassin things, be placing more emphasis on the build-up, positioning and stealthing your way to the kill as a challenge, rather than presenting the challenge through level barriers. Along similar grounds, I hope that Valhalla considers making some assassinations of targets more linear and distinguished. Whilst there is some merit to the open-ended freedom that Origins and Odyssey gives to assassinations, allowing you to completely plan out the approach is initially refreshing, I will admit. But the encounters are so frequent in these games that by the 4th, 5th, 1000th assassination, they all start to feel too similar. This is probably one of my more hopeful rather than realistic desires, but the reintroduction of the black box style assassinations found in Unity and Syndicate would be great. And of course, the return of the post-assassination corridor conversations. I could easily write a thesis on the ways in which Valhalla can learn from the previous games, both the mistakes and also the aspects that should be reintroduced. However, I wanted to today discuss some of the most prominent issues with the recent RPG titles. The combat, the assassin lore, and the open world are ultimately the three biggest staples of the series, and how they are handled in Valhalla will tell us what direction Ubisoft wants to take. The hype this game is generating isn't unfounded. The Viking theme, promises being delivered present the title, but does feel like a breath of fresh air. Furthermore, the studio bringing us this game has produced fan favourites in Black Flag and Origins. High expectations are natural. Darby McDevitt and the team are making bold claims, talking about the ultimate Viking experience and a new, unique, episodic style of storytelling. I'm excited as a fan, nervous as a critic, and speculative knowing it's Ubisoft. Valhalla isn't going to suddenly unite old fans and new, nor is it going to forgo the shaky groundwork that has been established in the previous two titles. But, just maybe, it will show that Ubisoft has begun to find their footing on their journey into a new genre. And with these big claims being made, let's hope that regardless of whether this series unites fans, it at least bloody well delivers on what was promised.